Why Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens was not a great Star Wars. Warning, I'm going to spoil some essential things about Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens. If you do not want to hear spoilers, stop immediately. There are going to be spoilers. Warning, take this serious. So for all who remained, I have tried the whole long way home from the movie back home to contemplate how I feel about the new Star Wars film. Now, let me make one thing clear. The film is not a bad movie, not at all. But if I think that as a sci-fi movie, then I would say, okay, it was an entertaining, good sci-fi movie. But as a Star Wars movie, I have to say no, I didn't feel the Star Wars vibe. Something about the magic that made Star Wars. Something about even the kitschy feeling. Something was just missing. It took me quite a time. I contemplated the 1.5 hours I needed to go home. And I didn't have an immediately bad feeling at the end of the movie, but when I was thinking about what I had just seen, it really didn't make sense, and it didn't really fill me with the awe and the coolness that Star Wars used to make. And I'm even going so far as to say I liked Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, more than I liked Episode 7, The Force Awakens. Now, before you troll and flame me, hear me out why this is so, or at least was so for me. You know, the actors were good. I think the new actors were really played their roles well, so nothing to criticize there. But how I'm going to explain it, I didn't feel for any of the characters of the movie, let's say with the exception maybe of Han Solo and Chewbacca, really anything. I mean, Rey and Finn and Poe Dameron and Kylo Ren, they played their parts well, but none of these characters really, I felt not attached to any of them. If I remember the Phantom Menace, there was Qui-Gon, there was the young Obi-Wan, there was Senator Palpatine, who was a very interesting, cool character. There was Darth Maul, who was really, in the few scenes that he did something, was really badass cool. And even strange characters like these Trade Federation guys, or Mace Windu and Yoda, who had just brief appearances in the Phantom Menace. But the Phantom Menace was full of interesting characters. And the entire prequel trilogy, I'm not going to compare it to the original trilogy because I think that's not fair to compare that, because that was one of a kind and it's just was just way too long ago. But if, as I said, I have a lot of characters in the Phantom Menace which I really liked and found interesting. In the entire prequel trilogy, I had this feeling that a vast, big galaxy was presented to me. There was a Senate with many senators. There was a Jedi Order. Those Jedi were all over the galaxy, and you had this impression. Okay, this really plays in a big galaxy with many planets. Here in The Force Awakens, I had the feeling that the entire galaxy consists of 2 or 3 planets. The First Order has 1 planet, this new super weapon planet. The Resistance has 1 planet, and we know nothing about the Republic. We know that apparently the Republic is there, so it has been reformed in some way, but we know there are so many ways about which have heard nothing, or just got so few hints that it's almost as if all the knowledge had been forgotten. And I just wasn't content with how things played out. As I said, you had the impression as if the entire conflict was focused on 2 planets. The planet where the Resistance is hiding, and the planet where the First Order built their new super weapon. And the entire rest of the galaxy was sort of like blank, which you learn nothing about this. And I thought, how can this be? We heard in the prequel trilogy, in the many, many expanded universe books, we heard so much about so many cool and interesting planets, about the Jedi Order who once ruled it, about even the Empire. In the original trilogy, you get the impression that the Empire was spanning a big, vast galaxy. And here, it was just these two planets. And one thing was really strange when you have this attack on the in the last part of the movie, when you have the attack on the third super weapon of the New Order, which is essentially a third Death Star, which I don't mind generally, but it is such a strange thing. Okay, the Empire, or the First Order as it is called now, they make a super weapon again, they make a Death Star again. Okay, fine, why not? But they even make another vulnerable spot which you can just destroy it with. This is so ridiculous. I think, who the hell builds these things that you make 3 Death Stars, and every single time you have one spot where you can attack, and where the dozens of X-Wing fighter are enough to destroy the entire frigging super weapon with? Who the hell builds these things? I mean, it was plausible maybe with the first one, maybe even with the second one, but you really have the impression that the dark side people really learn nothing in the construction of their super weapons. And I really watched the scene very closely. They have, what, a dozen X-Wing? I mean, how is it possible that the entire Rebel Alliance, now calling itself Resistance, is only consistent of 12 or 15 X-Wing? They have no capital ships, they have no big fleet, and they had 30 years to build a Resistance armada or force, and all they have is a handful X-Wing to attack, and this 12 or 15 X-Wing are plenty enough to destroy another Death Star-like super weapon again. This is just devoid of... It doesn't make sense to me. I had the impression, if you saw a Rebel Alliance, they would have used those 20, 30 years to build a big ass fleet, many outposts, I don't know, something to counter the remaining of the Empire. And the Empire or New Order likewise, that they had a fleet, that they were distributed over star systems, I don't know, something, but apparently they dug themselves into this one planet, and this was apparently all. I mean, there may be more, but we don't know of anything. It wasn't even hinted. And this was so unsatisfying. And going back to the main characters, again, I think they have played the characters well, but for reasons I can't really put my finger on, I didn't feel anything for them. I really can't tell you why right now, because Rey and Finn and Poe and Kylo Ren, they didn't. It's not that they play their roles bad. On the contrary, I think they're really capable actors. But for some reason, I couldn't feel any connection to these characters, and they didn't feel particularly Star Warsy. There was one lightsaber duel, and that wasn't even particularly interesting. If I think of the really badass, cool lightsaber duels in the prequel trilogy, you have this epic, cool lightsaber duel in the Phantom Menace with Darth Maul, Obi-Wan, and Qui-Gon, which is really one of the coolest lightsaber duels, in my opinion, ever. Then you had in episode 2 with Count Dooku, and in episode 3 several lightsaber battles. These were badass, cool lightsaber duels, and here no one was jumping, flipping, tossing stuff, and all the entire cool force abilities were drawn back to this old man fencing from the episode 4. That was kind of underwhelming. I mean, with Rey and Finn, they had the lightsaber for the first time, so it was probably to be expected. But Kylo Ren was supposed to be trained for years since infancy in the Force, in lightsaber battling, and that is all he was capable. And he was overwhelmed by two noobs who had the lightsaber just for the first time in their hand. Hello, how plausible is that? No, the more I think about these things, the less any of it makes sense. And the impression is more an emotional impression. In a few days or weeks, if I see the film a few times more on DVD, it will make me more clear why. But um, this film had, in my opinion, the same problem than the last two Star Trek films also made from J.J. Abrams. The last two Star Trek movies, they were interesting sci-fi, but they did not feel like Star Trek at all. And the same is true here, at least for me, that I think, okay, it was a really good, not a top, but a good film. It was an entertaining film, but I had almost no Star Wars feeling about this. As I say, I've only a few points, like some of the really strange, illogical things, like creating a super weapon which again has a vulnerability, which just one point has to be attacked by 5 people sneaking in and 12 X-Wing shooting, and that is enough to destroy the super weapon. So if that's that easy, I wonder why the Resistance didn't destroy the super weapon years ago, if that is so easy. There was no explanation. And I don't know, there was one of the magic points about Star Wars for me is you have Jedi and you have Sith, and Kylo Ren certainly has the potential for an interesting character, but little I saw there was really impressing me. Darth Vader was really an impressive character. Even Dooku was an impressive character in its own way, and the moment he revealed himself, Palpatine was a badass villain. Darth Maul in his small role he had in the first Star Wars. But I don't know, Kylo Ren just feels a little bit like an angry Jedi wannabe who wants to be a Sith, but he doesn't even have a Darth title. And no, just the magic just wasn't there. I'm sorry if I'm repeating here myself and this. I'm still trying to grasp the essence of it, but the magic wasn't there. And I know that many people have bashed George Lucas for making Star Wars often so cheesy. And one of my main impressions is that it is exactly that cheesiness that is missing. It is exactly the George Lucas handwriting that absolutely is lacking here. And I think if I take all the J.J. Abrams films I know into mind, I think J.J. Abrams is a very visual person. So the visuals you see are really awesome, but he has no idea about cool characters or presenting them in an appropriate way. It was like it was lacking soul, like it was lacking heart. And even the cheesiness of the prequel trilogy, and even the moments where there were some moments where even I groaned and said, like this description in the first, when Shmi was explaining that her son was just there, like the virgin birth of Christ or something like that. That was a really, I don't know, facepalm moment, no doubt about this. Or the love scenes in episode 2 and 3 were, okay, we can forget about this. But there were really Star Warsy moments, like the duel, like the between Darth Maul and Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, or the pod racing. Those were really cool Star Warsy moments. And I'm sorry, I didn't feel such Star Warsy moments, really. It just escaped me, and sorry, I can't say it otherwise. So let me hear in the comments what you think about it. And I'm not trying to troll you, really. I'm really serious about this impression. But the longer I thought about it driving home, and the longer I think about it now, the more I think, no, this isn't a continuation of Star Wars I had hoped. There's no Jedi Order. There is no Republic that we see. It's all just so miniature stuff and so few information given to us that is just too bare bone for me, and it's just not the magic anymore in this. So as I said, let me hear in the comment what you think, and well, may the force be with you.